Fifth grade lesson 2.5 is estimating with two-digit divisors. Just remember, estimating is just giving you that ish number. It should, the answer or quotient should be close to this ish. We can use estimating to get in that area of what the amount should be close to, and that way we can do the calculation more easily. Our essential question is, how can you use compatible numbers to estimate quotients? Remember, this is delving way back a little ways, but compatible numbers where you were estimating, but you were using numbers that you know are factors of that number. So you're using your multiplication facts to help you identify which numbers you want to round to make it the easiest. So you're rounding to your advantage. You can estimate quotients using compatible numbers that are found by using basic facts and patterns. So refreshing memory, basic fact, 5 times 7 is 35. If I had 350 divided by 50, that equals 7, or 7 times 50 equals 350, that 0 got added to the end. If I have 3,500 that divided by 50, that would be 70. Notice the 0 added to the end on these gives you 2 zeros there. So that's kind of that pattern that you notice, 3 zeros are added to these 2, giving you 3 zeros here. So just keep those in mind, that will help us through this. The observation deck of the Willis Tower in Chicago, Illinois, is 1,353 feet above the ground. Elevators lift visitors to that level in 60 seconds. About how many feet do the elevators travel per second? So in 60 seconds, they travel that high, and we want to split this into 1 second increments, and if we're splitting evenly, of course it's division. This amount is being divided up in the 60 seconds so we can find out how much 1 second is. So there's our initial amount that we're covering. We're splitting it into 60 increments because that's 60 seconds. We want it just to be 1 second. We're going to use two sets of compatible numbers to find two different estimates. So if this is a 6, and I'm just looking at these first two numbers here, 1 and 3, like 13. 6 times 2 gives me 12, and that's pretty close to 13. So I would do 1,200, round this to 1,200, and that's what they did there. Maybe I can explain that better. I've got the 60 here, or I could round it to 60 if it was a number that wasn't a perfect rounded number, but 6 is the number I'm focusing on. Then these two digits, the 1,353, I'm only focusing on the 2 digits because I want to round it to a number that is a multiple of 6. And 12 is the closest number to 13 that is a multiple of 6. So I would round it to that. So 1,200 divided by 60 is what we can round that to. That's rounding it or estimating using compatible numbers so that it rounds easily or it divides easily. The next number above, because this is above 1,353, it's above 1,200. The next multiple up from 12 for 6 is 18. So you can round it up too. So we rounded down here and rounded it up here. I would have rounded it down and just left it at that, knowing that it's a little less than the actual quotient will be. Now we use the basic fact. 12 divided by 6. 12 divided by 6 is 2. 120 divided by 60 is also 2. And 1,200 divided by 60, there's that extra 0 on the end, is 20. On this one, the basic fact, 18, they're looking at this and this. 18 divided by 6, the basic fact, is 3. And so if I do 180 divided by 60, that is going to be 3 also. But if I have another 0 on the end divided by 60, I only wanted 60 here, so I've got to add that second 0 somewhere, so I have to put it onto this here, 30. So the elevators travel between 20 to 30 feet per second. That was this amount and this amount because we rounded low and then we rounded high using the multiples of 6. The more reasonable estimate is 20. That's what I was mentioning before, because 1,200 right here is closer to the 1,353 than 1,800 is. So it's going to be closer to 20 than 30, maybe like 23-ish. So the observation deck elevator in the Willis Tower travel about 20 feet per second, a little more than 20 feet per second. And so that's what this lesson is about, is just finding the quotient-ish using estimating with numbers that you recognize, your multiplication facts that you recognize. And in this lesson, they're not asking for the actual quotient. When they're asking for that, we'll do all the division. This is just asking for the ish answer, and so a lot of this might be able to be done in your head, depending on how well you're understanding the concept. Miriam saved $650 to spend during her 18-day trip to Chicago. She doesn't want to run out of money before the trip is over, so she plans to spend about the same amount each day. Estimate means, we don't have to do the exact answer. We can get a close enough answer. Estimate how much she can spend each day. So she has all of this money. This is what's being split apart, and she's splitting it amongst her 18 days evenly. This is what's being split. It's your dividend. And how many times it's being split apart is your divisor. 650 divided by 18. So when we're estimating, let's round these numbers off. 18 is pretty close to 20. So I'm going to round that to 20. And then I'm going to look at 650. And multiples of 20 would be 20, 40, 60. I'll make that 65 a 60 instead, with that extra 0 on the end. So 65, I'm going to round to 60 because I wanted something that 20 can go into evenly. Okay, so 600 divided by 20 is going to equal 30, right? 20, it goes into 60, 20, 40, 60 3 times. And I wanted another 0 on the end, but I don't want another 0 on this one, so it's going to have to go on that one. 20 times 30 equals 600. And so that's where they got the 30 from. We could also have rounded up, and so if I'm counting by 20, I would go 20, 40, 60, 80. So I would be calling this instead 80 with a 0 on the end. So 800. And if I count by 20, and I'm just looking at the 80 here, 20, 40, 60, 80, there's 4 with another 0 on the end. That's how I get 40. So Miriam can spend anywhere between 30 and $40 each day, and she would have enough for her whole trip if she only spent between $30 and $40 each day. Ish, right? We're not looking for an exact amount. We're looking for an approximation, an estimate. Which estimate do you think is the better one for Miriam to use? Well, if she goes 40 each day, that was the high estimate, right? If she goes 40 each day and does that continually, she's going to run out, and her goal was not to run out. So if it were me, I would try to keep myself at 30 each day, especially since it was closer, rounded 650 is closer to 600 than it is 800. I'd try to keep it around 30 each day, and then on the last day, any of the extra stuff I could go crazy with. So that would be my reasoning. You might have a different reasoning. Feel free to put what reasoning you have on there, but I'm going to say it's better to round down to 600. So she has enough. She'll run out if she rounds up every single day. All right, they want us to find 2 estimates for this using compatible numbers. So my first thing is rounding this. What is 52 going to round to? It's going to round to 50. Let me do a different color on that. 50. Now I'm just focusing in. I'm going to set aside the 0 for a moment, and I'm just focusing in on the 5, and I'm thinking of all my multiples of 5, looking at this 41 right here, and a multiple of 5 that's just below, as close to 41 as possible without going over, is 40. So I would round this to 40 and then add that 0 on the end. 5 times 8 gives me 40. And I already have the 0 on the end to account for that one. So my answer is going to be, my rounded down answer is going to be 8. Now, what if I rounded up? So the same scenario, but this time I rounded down. Now I'm going to round, what's the next multiple of 5 up? And it would be 45. 0 on the end. 5 times 9 is 45. And then I already have the 0 here, so that's tacked on there, so that's it. That's all the zeros I needed. So 9 times 50 is 450. So our low quotient would be 8, our high quotient would be 9, and probably it's going to be closer to 8 than it is 9 because this is 400 is closer to 415 than 450 is. So 8 little low 8.2 or something like that. Anyways, our answer is going to be between 8 and 9, 8 with a remainder of like 2 or something. Estimate the quotient here. I'm going to round 38 to 40. Now I'm going to just think about that 4 and its multiples. 4 times this, 4 times that, right? And thinking about that, I'm looking at these first 2 digits in my dividend, 27. What is just below 27 that's a multiple of 4? The closest I can get is 24. So I'll round that 2,764 to 2,400. And the one that's just above it, so the next multiple of 4 is going to be a little over 27, and that's 28, which is closer to this 2,700. This is the closer one. So I know that when I get my quotients for each of these, whatever the actual answer is, it's going to be closer to this one. Almost this one, but not quite. Okay. 4 times what number gives me 24. 4 times 6 does that. Then I have this 0 to account for that 0. I need one more 0 because I've got this one here and nothing to account for it. So that gets tacked on there. Gosh, you can hardly see that. Let me just, okay. All right. Then over here I do the same thing. 4 times what number gets me 28. 4 times 7 does that. I already have this 0 to account for this 0, but there's this spare 0 there, so I'm going to put it on this one. So our quotient, whatever it is here, is going to fall somewhere between 60 and 70, but closer to 70 because 2,764 is much closer to that, 2,800 rounded. All right, let's look at the Sharon Show. This is where if you're feeling like you kind of get it and you want to pause and try it and then play and see where you got stuck or see if you got it correct, this is a good time to do that. This is where you can find out if you are understanding this or where you're getting stuck, and we can help you get stuck out of it. Okay, we have 154 divided by 22. Let's round this to 20, which they did here. And when I round that to 20, I'm going to think of 2 and my multiples of 2. So what is close to 15, but not quite 15, that 2 can land on if you count by 2? It would be 14 with that 0 on the end, so I rounded it down. I'm also going to do the next highest one. What's the next multiple close to 15 that 2 will land on after 14? What's just higher than 15? 16 is. And then a 0 on the end to account for that place value. And that's what they did here, 140 divided by 20 and 160 divided by 20. 2 times what number gives me 14? 2 times 7 does. Do I need the 0 on the end? No, there's only one 0, and that's already hanging out here. So I don't need any more zeros, so this is my rounded number. Same thing here, 2 times what number gets me 16? 8 does that. And then there's a 0 here, but he's got a matching 0 already, so I can stop there. So my answer is going to fall, whatever this actual answer is, fall somewhere between 7 and 8. Probably almost right in the middle of 7, 8, 7.5 or something like that, because this is almost right in the middle of these two numbers. Okay. Hopefully that's helping you understand pieces are falling into place. 68 rounded. I'm going to round that to 70. Okay. So I'm going to think of my multiples of 7, the higher one and the lower one. That gets the one that's just lower, a multiple of 7 that's just lower than 50. Knowing my math facts really, really helps me this. If you don't have your math facts memorized, make sure you have a chart right in front of you to help you out here. So how close can I get to 50 without going over? I can get to 49 because 7 times 7 is 49. So I'm going to do 49 with a 0 to take that placeholder. And then what's the multiple of 7 that's right over that? 56? Yeah, 56. So, oopsie, 56 with a 0 on the end to account for that placeholder, that place value. Now I do my multiplication. 7 times 7 gives me 49. There's this 0 on the end, but so there's this one. So I have matching zeros, so I'm just fine. I'm done. 7 for that one. 7 times 8 gives me 56. And there's the 0 on the end, but so is that here that I ignored. So these two match, so I'm done. Whatever the answer to this, whatever the quotient to this is, it falls between 7 and 8. 7 with a remainder of something, something. Okay, let's try this one. Round that 81 to what? Yeah, round it to 80. We're going to use our, I'm going to do it twice here because we're going to do our high and our low. Now, thinking in terms of our multiples of 8, or looking down the 8 row on your grid, on your chart, if you're using that, what's just below 70 on your multiplication chart for 8, 64 is, or in your head if you're doing it. That's 64, and I have 2 place values, so 2 zeros. And then just above 70 as a multiple of 8 would be 72 with 2 zeros because I've got these 2 place values left over that I was ignoring. 8 times what number gets me 64? 8 times 8 does that. I already have this 0 accounted for. He has a match, but this guy doesn't have a match, so that's going to go on this answer. Hope that makes sense. I hope I'm explaining that part okay. 8 times 9 is 72. I already have a match for this 0 right here, but this guy doesn't have a match, so we need to add it to our quotient. So whatever our calculation for this is, when we find the actual quotient, when it becomes time to do that, we can now know that a reasonable answer would be between 80 and 90. All right. Ignore this one. This was for a different one. In fact, I'm going to retake a picture of those to give us more room. And for some of you, this may have clicked into place for you, and you're like, I don't need your training wheels anymore, Miss Sanchez. I'll go on Think Central. You're welcome to do that. If you feel like you've got the grasp for this and you don't need me to walk you through anymore, go ahead and go on Think Central and do your assignment there. If you're feeling like you can use a little more help to make sure you've got it solid, I'm going to do these next 3 problems with you and see if that helps you out, and then you can go on Think Central after that. Hopefully it will all fall into place completely by that point. Step 1, let me round this. 33, I'm going to round that down to a 30. And as I round down to a 30, I am thinking of my multiples of 3. And as I think of my multiples of 3, I'm thinking of multiples of 3 that are as close to 29, these first 2 digits, as close to 29 as possible without going over. 3 times 9 is 27. That's as close as I can get, so 27 with a 0 on the end for that placeholder. And then 3 times 10 is 30. Okay. So we have 3 times 9 was 27, and then the 0 on the end, the 0 on the end is already accounted for. Whoopsie. The 0 on the end is already accounted for, so I don't need any more zeros, so don't put another 0 on that. 3 times 1 is 3. This 0 is accounted for already. I need another 0 on there. So our quotient, whatever it is, will fall somewhere between 9 and 10. That's the estimate. Let's round 58. What are you rounding it to? I'm rounding it to 60. Hopefully you did too. And when I round it to 60, I'm now putting in my head all my multiples of 6. And I'm looking at 23 in relationship to those multiples of 6. Just under 23 as a multiple of 6 is 18, 21. 21. No, that's not right. I was thinking multiples of 7. Ignore that. Okay, 6 times 3 is 18. 6 times 4 is 24. So we've got 18 then. And 2 zeros because of the 2 spots left over. And then the next one above is 24. So multiples of 6, 6, 12, 18, 24. And 23 fell right in between is what I'm doing there. 2 zeros for those because I'm rounding it. 6 times what number gives me 18? 6 times 3 does that. I have this 0 accounted for here, but there's an extra 0 here. I've got to account for him so that he goes there. 6 times what number gives me 24? 6 times 4 does that. I have 1 0 here, so that matches him. And then I've got this lonesome 0, give him a partner. And so this quotient, whatever it is, will be somewhere between 30 and 40. Closer to 40, because 2,365 is closer to 2,400. Hopefully this is all falling into place. Let's round 19. I'm going to round that to 20. And as I round to 20, I'm looking at that 2 and thinking of all my multiples of 2. And I'm just going to look at the first number here because I'm counting by 2. So just below a 5 is 4, 2, 4, and then those 3 zeros. And then just above the 5, because 2 is 2, 4, 6, 8, you know, it covers a lot of ground. So I'm going to call that a 6. And now I'm just going to multiply 2 times what number gives me 4. 2 times 2 does that. I have a matching 0 there, but 2 unmatching zeros there. So that rounds there. 2 times what number gets me 6? 2 times 3, that's that basic fact they talked about earlier. Matching 0 there, but 2 unmatched zeros, so I'll put them there. So whatever this quotient is, it falls between 200 and 300 somewhere. Could I have rounded this to 52 and 54 and then rounded it that way? Yeah, I'd get a little more precise of a range also. So whichever route you're taking, it's just a matter of you narrowing down what that quotient should look like. Hopefully I explained this well enough. It's all clicking into place and you're ready to tackle this on Think Central. Good luck.